advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This isn't just government spending, it's a declaration of intent because America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it now. So here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium every single year, but we produce less than 1 million pounds domestically. Obviously, that leaves America 98% dependent on foreign suppliers for our supply. It's a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced weapons systems. With Russia controlling much of the global enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran threatening nuclear supply, the stakes could not be higher, which is why the White House has made it crystal clear. America must develop its own supply chain. And this is where Kirkstone Metals comes in. They trade under KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. They've got decades of uranium and junior mining expertise, and Kirkstone's leadership team knows how to turn exploration projects into real value. But the question is, can they do it again? Kirkstone controls two 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Athabasca Basin. This is the richest uranium district on the planet. Same area, same world-class neighborhood, and at their flagship Key Lake project, drilling has already hit high-grade uranium right near the surface, but the team truly believes the real prize lies deep underground. So using a playbook based on the decade's biggest discoveries, they're hunting the massive source below. So let's talk about the Athabasca Basin. It's home to multi-billion-dollar names like NextGen Energy and Denison Mines, but the real upside, it's often the junior explorers that are operating right next door. The Athabasca Basin has delivered over 20% of the world's uranium discoveries, with an estimated $200 to $300 billion worth of uranium identified in the ground, and yet Kirkstone is still sitting at a market cap below $12 million. That's an enormous disconnect between what's found in this district and how some companies are valued today. On January 14th, the U.S. administration reinforced their commitment to domestic energy security, invoking Section 232 via an executive order. It's a formal declaration of resource independence, and it goes beyond support. It's a mandate. Energy security is now national security. and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory tools to secure the nuclear fuel cycle in North America. Kirkstone Metals, trading as KSMCF in the U.S. and KSM in Canada, is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Now, uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Federal momentum has already begun to translate into dollars on the ground, including billions in planned funding for domestic uranium enrichment capacity. The sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years, and with its flagship drill program approved, Kirkstone has exploration underway, and they're advancing with a focus on execution. Some companies operating in the district are valued at over $10 billion, and with the U.S. pushing for domestic uranium, Kirkstone could potentially become a leading beneficiary of the reshoring mandate. So if you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and about a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. And a very special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us. Do appreciate it. If you haven't yet, please do me a favor and hit that like button and get ready to enjoy today's show. And also, if you were watching over there on YouTube, thank you very much for hanging out with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. We are specifically in the main event going to be talking about President Trump's incredible record, undefeated. 118 endorsements, and every single one has come through the primaries successfully. Now, the true test is going to be when we get to the general election in November. Now, with a record like what we see, President Trump's candidates overwhelmingly being chosen by the public, and the lack of enthusiasm for anything related to the Democrat Party or ideology on the left, are we going to see an overwhelming turnout for these same candidates in November? Is President Trump setting up what is hopefully going to be the ultimate reveal of just how broken our election system is? Because imagine if the radical left comes out, as they have sort of signaled over the last year, that President Trump is going to steal the midterms. The truth of the matter is that when elections are free and fair, you're going to have people who vote for things that are going to push their own agenda forward, all right? And right now, the agenda of America First is the best thing for America. That's why you see so much enthusiasm for it. The agenda of the radical left is for the destruction of the United States and for the destruction of most everything we hold sacred here in this country. So we are going to move into today's stories. First of all, though, I need to say thank you to Iemos, who says, great job on your investigative reporting. I've been listening to you since you didn't show your face on YouTube. Well, thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate that comment. That is high praise. Also, my good friend Greenbeard over there on Pilled says, drops a can of whoop ass. You, sir, are a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you for hanging out. Darla also says, good afternoon, Zach and Lisa. Thank you again for the updated news. And hey, chat. All right, I'd like to begin with something a little bit comical. You know, generally speaking, I feel that police officers don't get a lot of respect. But there are reasons why police officers don't always get the respect they deserve. There's a lot of people out there who just, as soon as you come across somebody who's wearing a uniform or a badge, they're going to start giving attitude. And that's a problem. But then you've also got police officers who, unfortunately, wear that badge, wear that uniform, and they get on a little bit of a power trip. And they'll definitely do things that are totally unacceptable. This is an example of an officer doing something totally unacceptable. You need to admit when you're wrong. And if you can't admit that you're wrong from time to time, then maybe you shouldn't be doing that which you are being paid for. Take a look at this, because this officer gets schooled in a way that I never thought would be possible.
It doesn't bother you, huh?
Maybe.
Yeah, a lot of times you can.
Maybe it's different because I'm a girl.
Hello, ma'am. Hey, good morning. I'm Deputy Gasala with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Recently, you're being pulled over. The city of Lake Worth today, we're doing an operation for distracted driver, and you drove past me holding the phone with your right hand, manipulating that phone. I mean...
We're doing an operation in the city of Lakeland today, and I saw you driving by holding your phone in your right hand. if you can't tell, or if you're listening to the audio, the driver holds up her right arm and she's an amputee. Okay, she doesn't have a right hand with which she can hold a phone. And necessarily because of that, her left hand was planted on her steering wheel. So the truth of the matter is this officer did not see what he is claiming that he saw. So the question then becomes, did he just pull her over and just make that up? Was this one of the quotas that he was given? Told to pull over a certain number of people and give them tickets for driving with their phone in their hand? Because as soon as she shows that she doesn't have a freaking right arm, the conversation rather, should be over. But he digs in.
I saw you
So
with your phone in your
obviously
hand.
not. So you want to just call this a day?
I don't
or-
want to call it a day. You had a hand
You
manipulating
just
the
said
phone.
my right hand.
Well, I thought I saw you with your right hand. You
So
had a
you
hand out.
didn't.
The right hand. I saw you
So you
manipulate
didn't.
with the right hand, perhaps not, right? But I saw you.
You didn't see me with my right
Okay,
hand.
so are you saying-
saying that you saw me with my
I
right
know
hand?
what I just said. I know what I just said. I'm asking you now. Did you yeah, or not have your phone on your hand?
I did not.
You did not have your phone in your
I
hand.
did not.
Hand to God, you didn't have your phone in your hand.
Hand to God.
The other hand to God, you don't have your phone in your hand.
Hand to God.
Cool. You have your driver's license, registration,
Yes,
and
I
insurance
do.
with you.
Now, she could have been a total shit about it. She could have, she was obviously a good sport. It's clear that this officer has nothing. He did not see her driving with her phone in her hand, and she handled it properly. All right. But there's plenty of people out there who would get loud and totally disrespectful. There's a give and a take in all relationships where you're going to be interacting with people, and the way you act is going to determine how that person responds to you. I don't think this woman is going to get a ticket because this officer is on body cam looking like a total dipshit. But it's a lesson, okay? It's a lesson. Police should be engaging in the practice of keeping the community safe. They should not be fishing for reasons to pull people over and give them a ticket. And I'm going to call it, that's exactly what this guy was on. He was on a fishing expedition. This is down here in Florida. It's really unfortunate. And I hope that this video got around the precinct so that everybody can see exactly why this is not a good idea. You can't just go pulling people over and pretending that they've done something that they haven't. Because I'll tell you what, there's a hell of a lot of real criminals out there. If police would focus on the real criminals rather than focusing on law-abiding citizens who are not doing anything wrong, then I think that the community would have a much better opinion of police in general. So there you go. Go ahead and take for that what you will. Hopefully that man has learned his lesson. All right, sticking down here in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis, for quite some time, has been talking about having the Florida state legislature create a plan to essentially get rid of property taxes for homesteaded Florida homeowners. So as somebody like myself, when you move to Florida, if your home is your primary residence, you receive something called a homestead property tax exemption. It's not a full exemption on property taxes for your home, but it is a discount on your property taxes. What Governor Ron DeSantis wants to do is to get rid of property taxes for people who live full-time in the state of Florida. Now, there's a lot of pushback from local communities because property taxes are assessed at the county level. A good portion of your county's budget is coming from them taxing you for your home, which means that you are fully and forever renting it from the county. It is never truly your property if you have to pay to remain in it. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis wants to put an end to it. The Florida state legislature has gone through a couple of false starts to get something together. Eventually, what this is going to have to be is a ballot measure put forth to the voters of Florida to add a amendment to the Florida state constitution. And it needs to be one question, within a certain set of parameters. Should Florida homeowners, homesteaded homeowners, no longer have to pay property taxes? And the answer is yes, okay? We should not have to pay property taxes because what we've seen, and the Florida version of Doge through Blaze Angolia, he's shown down here that a lot of these local communities, as people have moved down here to Florida, as the values of homes have artificially inflated, because that's not real value. You know, you're essentially paying more for something that you're not getting a return on, and there's nothing like that that makes any sense. Can you imagine if you had stocks and the price of your stock went up in value, and then you were assessed a tax on that value, and the only way to get that tax paid would be for you to perhaps sell some of your stock, and then maybe you got to sell it. The whole thing is ridiculous, okay? You should not be taxed on things that are like this, all right? So Governor DeSantis has just called a special session of the Florida State Legislature to get this done, and to do it within very specific circumstances, because when it goes on the ballot, 60% of the people who vote have got to vote yes to have it added as a constitutional amendment. Now, they've done the math. This is not going to harm local communities. Most of these communities have taken the money from raising your property taxes, and they've put it into bullshit like DEI, or they've given themselves raises. They'll be able to do all of the business of paying for the roads, paying for the police, keeping schools funded, all of that stuff, without having to break the bank for people who live here. They've also done the math on how, if they need to, they'll be able to give some money to local communities to offset the difference. There is also so many people that come here for tourism. They could fund everything with all of the other money that we have. There's no reason to take money from people from property taxes. So let's go ahead and look at this clip right here, and Ron is going to explain how this would actually work out. There's going to be a couple of different thresholds, and then eventually they'll get to the point where, 92% of the people who live in Florida full-time are not going to pay taxes.
That we are going to work with the legislature on to be on the ballot.
Daniel Perez is shit. He is. And that's why nothing has been done up until this point. And that is why Governor DeSantis is forcing it through a special session. Perhaps I should also explain this. When the governor requests a special session on one particular subject, that means that the Florida State Legislature must convene to address that singular question, and they cannot address anything else. They can't get distracted with anything. They can't go talking about other items. They can't be adding amendments to it that have nothing to do with anything else. Governor DeSantis has come to force the issue in such a way so that this will likely happen. So here we go.
Ballot will begin with an initial raising of the homestead limit to $250,000 for all Florida homesteaders.
Now, currently it's like $50,000. So that means that on the first $50,000 of your taxable assessed value, you don't have to pay it if you have a homestead. So for me, I would immediately be in that first group of people, because I don't live in a mansion. I don't live in like a whole bunch of property. It's a modest home in a Florida suburb. So yes, thank you, Governor DeSantis. Please do this.
Then the legislature commanded to enact a schedule that will lead to the full elimination of the homestead limit. Now, why this is something that I think will be very strong, and I think something that will be meaningful, a $250,000 limit, that eliminates property tax for 60% of Florida homeowners. Once you put a schedule in, and this would be something that we'd work with the legislature on after the vote is taken in November if it's successful, when you raise to 500,000 limit, that's 92% of all Florida residents would be tax-free. I think this bottom-up approach is a better approach. There have been some proposals where, every homestead, they take 2/3 off every homestead, or however they do it. And the problem with that, just to me, is, even someone owns a $200,000 house isn't going to have eliminated. They're still going to be paying property tax. Someone has a $200 million home, they're going to get this massive. I'd rather focus on folks who are new homeowners, young people, seniors on fixed income, our middle-class folks. And so this will be really significant. Now, why do it that way? Well, one, you got to pass it. Two, it's a way to be able to make this a smooth transition to where people aren't going to say, oh, you're not going to be able to have money for services. You're going to be able to do it. And I'll talk a little bit about other things we're going to do to ensure that. So this is something that can actually get done. I think it could be meaningful. Right off the bat, 60% do nothing. Everyone else is still getting a massive tax cut. And then pretty soon, you're going to end up having over 90% of Florida homeowners for sure. And then as you go up, obviously you sweep more people in. But that's just something really significant, that 92% of the people in this state who own a home and are homesteaded, would not have property tax just by getting the exemption up to that level. That's something that's really, really meaningful. And those are the people that I really, really want to help. Because we've seen all the things that have been difficult in the economy in terms of the America's inflationary spiral since COVID, and it's tough. And people see all this inflation accumulates in terms of compounding, and so we want to be able to do. So those are the folks I think it's going to really make a difference of. Now, what the proposal will also do is constitutionally say, okay, local governments, you get all this residential property tax from the non-homestead and from the commercial. We'll always say that if you cut property tax, that people aren't going to have police or all this. So here's the thing. That revenue can only be used for schools, for police, for fire, and the core services that we all agree on. It's not going to be allowed to be used on some of the other things that I know are a little bit more divisive in terms of whether they're going to do. So that actually ensures that that money that is being taken, that's still an awful lot. That's still going to be, under this proposal, that'll be more than $50 billion. It'll be over 50, 55 billion, somewhere like that. They're still getting a lot of money, way more than what they got just 7 years ago, tens of billions of dollars more. And obviously, that will phase down from the homestead, but it will also go up as the economy expands, as more people buy second homes and the snowbird. Here's the thing. Tax someone rich. If some billionaire from Brazil's buying tax them. Good.
So essentially, this plan is designed to help the elderly, to help middle-income people, to help first-time home buyers. This is going to be a really, really big deal if they can actually get it done. And the reason I'm glad Governor DeSantis chose to do it this way, and I've talked about this before, is that the proposals they were looking at in the state legislature, they had like 6 competing proposals, and none of them were good. And what they were planning to do was pass those through the state legislature, put them on the ballot, and then have the Florida voters vote on all of them. None of them would reach 60%, and then they would just completely abandon it. By Governor DeSantis doing it this way, giving them the actual terms by which it needs to be passed, he is tying their hands behind their back. He is showing the voters of Florida that if the state legislature does not want to do this for you, then they obviously don't care about you. They care about special interests. They care about foreigners. They care about the local DEI hires that are being paid from tax money that's coming in from your property. And the other part of this is through the Florida Doge effort that they've had here, they've shown just the incredible boost in revenue that these cities have had and no measurable increase in quality of life for the people that are living there. In many places, here in my hometown, they put in a whole bunch of houses and they didn't properly grade, they didn't properly put in drainage, and so you've got newer neighborhoods that are overtaking older neighborhoods, and the older neighborhoods are getting flooded out every single time that it rains. And the city, they're not doing anything about it, but they're getting a hell of a lot more money from your taxes. They're paying themselves more at City Hall, and they are paying for stupid things that have nothing to do with the average day-to-day business of running a city. So this is great, and I'm very excited to see that it's happening. So, continuing, we are now going to take a look at Alabama. Alabama is in the news right now for a couple of reasons, but we're not going to talk first about redistricting. We're going to talk about a case of judicial corruption. This is a judge in Alabama who was just suspended because she got caught making racist remarks against a white clerk. Yes, she is a black woman. Probate judge Yashida Blanchard. She's just gotten hit with a 120-page complaint after she delayed cases to walk her dog and even attacked a white woman with these racially charged comments. Blanchard called herself the, quote, ultimate authority in conversations with her staff. This is, again, one of the just worst examples of corruption within positions of authority, similar to the cop that we opened the show with. Judge Blanchard is accused of both ethical and judicial misconduct by delaying cases so she could walk her dogs. In one of these cases, where she delayed it so she could walk her freaking dogs, a patient was hospitalized for an additional 2 weeks because of Blanchard's delays, because she couldn't make her lazy ass down to the courthouse. This patient now remains hospitalized for an additional 2 weeks, solely due to the lack of timely access to the hearing process. This was an email from the hospital staff. This not only prevents her from being home with her family for Thanksgiving, but it also generates unnecessary hospitalization costs and creates avoidable emotional distress for the patient. Now, Blanchard also attacked a chief clerk by the name of Amanda Reed. She said, "Oh, I forgot you all like kissing white ass," Blanchard said to her staffer about her fondness of Reed. So she is a judge in Jefferson County, Alabama, and she is now out of the courtroom indefinitely as this complaint makes its way through the judicial review process, formally accused of both ethical and judicial misconduct. Now, Judge Elizabeth French is the current presiding judge in Jefferson County, and she appointed retired probate judge Jerry Friday to serve in Blanchard's position temporarily, as Blanchard is now not going to be able to hold cases. And appointed retired Judge Carol Smitherman will also be temporarily serving as the chief election official for Jefferson County. So the complaint lays out dozens of allegations against Blanchard. I only wrote just a couple of them, or excuse me, read just a couple of them for you. But it claims that she ran the probate court in an incompetent and unprofessional manner, and she would routinely target both attorneys and staff. She manufactured a backlog that created havoc and involuntary commitments. The commission charges against Blanchard with pattern and practice of failing to diligently discharge her judicial duties, a pattern and practice of failing to follow the law, a pattern and practice of exhibiting bias against attorneys appearing in her courtroom, a failure to disqualify from a case in which Blanchard served as an attorney, harassment, intimidation, retaliation against probate court staff, allowing other court officials subject to Blanchard's direction and control to engage in harassment and intimidation of probate court staff themselves. Also, failure to maintain professional competence in judicial administration. This woman is a menace. If you live in Jefferson County, Alabama, I would like to know if you've ever had an experience to meet this woman, or you've ever had to go to probate court and see her. But here, let's take a look. I believe we've got a video from her TikTok. Walking power, queen.
We down with us too. Hello.
Menace. This woman is an absolute menace. I gotta say, it seems like there are quite a few cases, examples just like this, which seem to pop up all over the country. You know, there are some types of people, they just get a little bit of power and they just get drunk on it. And I'm glad to see that we're doing something about it, at least on a limited basis. But the problem is far, far bigger than merely a lowly probate court judge. We got to go far beyond that. Now, let's jump up to Illinois. The case that I told you about the other day, the Broadway 6, I was so pissed about this because this was cut and dry. This was so obvious. We now know exactly why that case was dropped and why the DOJ had to do it, because it appears that the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, that is the overall U.S. Attorney over the entire office, after looking into the way this office was being run, once this case came out as being totally mismanaged, turns out that there is a pattern of abuse, systemic problems that have existed in this office's past handling of prosecutions. and particularly related to grand jury proceedings, which is exactly where they ran into trouble with the Broadway Six. So a federal judge had determined that longtime DOJ employee Sherry Mecklenburg had engaged in misconduct before the grand jury, which was handed down their indictments in October of 2025. Now, Mecklenburg left the office in February 26, and she detailed to the Dem side of the Senate Judiciary Committee. She was fired. Now, while local media is desperate to portray this as an example of how the Trump DOJ is incompetent or the Trump DOJ is corrupt, U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros, who was appointed by President Trump, today, after he started looking into this, announced major reforms and an ongoing review of cases that were handled by Mecklenburg and the other assistant U.S. attorneys that were involved in the Broadway Six matter. This is another example of the way that the DOJ is cleaning house. It just is really too bad that it didn't start happening until after it was discovered that these people, these assistant U.S. attorneys, were intentionally mismanaging cases so that they could have them thrown out with prejudice, because that is exactly what happened. You know, Kate Abigazela sashaying down the street, smug little nose up in the air, talking about how justice was served. Justice wasn't served. No, somebody rigged the court proceedings to ensure that she and her 5 co-defendants were never going to be able to stand trial under the terms of the case that they were being tried under. This woman intentionally acted with malfeasance and recklessness in the way that she interacted with the grand jury. Sherry Mecklenburg, I would not be surprised if she ends up having charges filed against her. And this is also, unfortunately, probably going to come back and bite her in the ass on a whole host of other cases. They're going to go back and they're going to look at every single case that Sherry and all of her other Democrat acolytes were involved in through the Northern District of Illinois. And they may likely need to allow these people to get out of prison if they are in prison. They also make the U.S. Attorney's Office among, if not the leading district in the country on grand jury disclosures. These remediations should be deeply curative and put to rest once and for all the divergent practices that have existed across this office for decades. Now, take a look at this. There were a group of former employees for the Northern District of Illinois. They quit their jobs at the U.S. Attorney's Office there and immediately went and started a political organization essentially fighting against the Trump DOJ. So we have this tweet here from Justice Connection. As federal immigration agents descended on Chicago in Operation Midway Blitz, former Illinois AUSAs organized. In Justice Connection's latest Substack, they explain how more than 100 former prosecutors came together to speak out. If you're interested in organizing your former colleagues, reach out. We can help. We're former Illinois AUSAs, and we're organizing to defend the rule of law. No, they forgot how to implement the rule of law. They have abandoned their position as attorneys, meaning that they have completely screwed the pooch on how they're supposed to act and instead have engaged in the political weaponization of their positions. And so I hope every single one of them is going to be charged, and I hope every single one of them are going to be put on trial, because you simply cannot allow this to happen. The Justice Department is going to have to show that this is not going to be acceptable. This is the deep state. This is the, quote, resistance. Let's take a look at the announcement from the U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros. Andrew Boutros, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, today announced a series of sweeping internal reforms of the office's grand jury practices and disclosures that took place yesterday. The remediation plan, which represents the most substantial and significant internal changes to the office's grand jury procedures in decades, will streamline the office's grand jury processes and disclosures. The new process moving forward will be more transparent, effective, and impactful, while greatly reducing the likelihood of mistakes and errors. The important reforms, which took effect yesterday for all grand jury representations in the Northern District of Illinois, establish clear and unequivocal expectations and rules for federal prosecutors related to grand jury disclosures and the timing of those disclosures. Among the many changes in the remediation plan are increased and expanded education about grand jury presentations, including extensive deep dive training from national experts outside the office. U.S. Attorney Boutros and the Department of Justice have also taken swift action related to internal personnel matters. That would be the firing of people like Mecklenburg. One of the benefits of being the first Chicago U.S. attorney to have previously been chair of white collar in private practice is that I have represented and advised as my own personal clients some of the largest public and other companies and their audit committees, boards, C-suite executives, and others in highly sensitive and bet the company, government, and internal investigations, said Boutros. Everybody who has handled high-stakes corporate cases knows that in addition to the importance of thorough, honest, and objective investigations, there must also be remediation, reforms, and process improvements to allow organizations to accept responsibility and make sure the same mistakes don't happen again. What I have formulated and thereafter implemented on Tuesday of this week are among the most sweeping reforms to address root cause issues in the NDIL's federal prosecutorial practices and procedures, especially as they relate to the grand jury and grand jury disclosures. They also make the Chicago U.S. Attorney's Office among, if not the leading district in the country on grand jury disclosures. These remediations should also be deeply curative and put to rest once and for all the divergent practices that have existed across this office for decades, including from one assistant U.S. attorney to another, as well as from one generation to the next, essentially saying that the Northern District of Illinois has been shit for generations. Continuing. That's because there are clear, bright line rules that everyone must abide by, which should streamline and simplify the decision-making and disclosure process as opposed to bedevil it. It also should all but eliminate points of contention between federal prosecutor and defense counsel as it relates to these grand jury issues. After learning of certain conduct by the government and the grand jury during a recent case, this is the conduct that U.S. Attorney Boutros went before the judge and said, I am sorry, but I have learned about the behavior of my AUSAs. The way that they undertook this job was completely improper, and so therefore we are taking accountability, we are bringing it to your attention, and we're never going to allow it to happen again. This is so deeply different from anything you would have seen in the past because in this instance, of course, bad U.S. attorneys used the system to allow guilty people to go free. But in the past, it may have been bad U.S. attorneys using the system to force innocent people into prison. Neither way is it acceptable. We cannot allow the misuse of the judicial system and the legal system just because it might benefit us one day and then, not accept it the next because it goes against our civil rights. We simply need to have it fair and balanced across the board. So continuing, immediately moved to dismiss the indictment in that case and proactively initiated an immediate review of other grand jury presentations that could have been impacted in a similar fashion. The inquiry has included both a root cause analysis of the office's practices and procedures generally, as well as an exam of any cases by the AUSAs who went into the grand jury in that case that could have been impacted by similar conduct. The office's review is far along but remains ongoing. In addition, the office has proactively reached out to the defendant's attorneys in other cases handled by those same AUSAs and has agreed to give them the minutes from the grand jury sessions in those cases. Minutes from a grand jury session include the highly secretive portion where AUSAs, as legal advisor to the grand jury, speak to grand jurors about the law and sometimes the application of the law to the facts without a witness present. The reforms announced today, many of which are being implemented for the first time anywhere in the country, will transform and modernize the office's procedures while continuing to adhere to the long-standing tradition that a prosecutor serves as one of the most beneficent forces in our society, as then Attorney General and later Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson shared in his seminal 1940 address, The Federal Prosecutor. Attorney General Jackson remarked that the prosecutor's powers have been granted to our law enforcement agencies because it seems necessary that such a power to prosecute be lodged somewhere. This authority has been granted by people who really wanted the right thing done. They wanted crime eliminated, but they also wanted the best in our American traditions preserved. In announcing his reforms to the office, U.S. Attorney Boutros thanked many different people. We won't read all of that. All right, so, frustrating, but of course, you can't fix a problem unless you can identify it, and thank God they've identified it. Thank you to Paulie 9363 for the phone. Appreciate you over there, buddy. All right, now let's check in with Justice Clarence Thomas. Once again, jumping back to the situation yesterday in Florida. So, Drunk Pinata, thank you very much for rating the stream, my friend. I appreciate you. All right, so Justice Thomas was the dissent that was delivered yesterday as the Supreme Court refused to hear Florida's case against California and Washington over their practice of allowing illegal aliens to get CDLs and then, of course, drive on our roads and then kill our people. As I said yesterday, the court is the only place that an issue like this can be remediated. If you are the state of Florida and you have a problem with what California or Washington is doing, the only way that you can have that problem, that issue solved is by going to the Supreme Court of the United States. And by the Supreme Court refusing to hear Florida's case, they have essentially given Florida and the people of Florida no way to remediate that claim. So the court denied Florida's motion to leave to file a bill of complaint in the original jurisdiction case, leaving the state with nowhere else to bring their claims, Thomas wrote. And he was joined by Samuel Alito. All right, so as you know, this is all related to the August 12th, 2025 crash on 95. Again, it was right in my backyard, happened very close to where I live. An illegal alien by the name of Harjinder Singh, an illegal alien from India, was here in the United States, came in illegally through the U.S.-Mexico border, got a CDL from both California and Washington, despite the fact that he couldn't speak English, despite the fact that he couldn't read road signs written in English, despite the fact that he had failed the tests to determine whether or not he was safe to be on the road no fewer than 10 times in both California and Washington, Singh was allowed to drive. Okay, now you come freely into the state of Florida from any other state that borders us. Nobody is there checking your driver's license as you come in. Of course, we've gotten a little bit more stringent about that now. We've got weigh stations that are all around the country, and you get a lot more people that are getting pulled over and checked to see if they are legal and if they understand what English is. It's the official language of the United States of America. Learn it or get the hell out. So anyways, Singh did a U-turn on 95, and you can't do a U-turn with a giant truck like that on 95. It ended up killing a family of 3. And Thomas did not mince words when he wrote the dissent. He said, an illegal alien who cannot read English road signs cannot drive an 80,000-pound tractor. And there is only one way that you can put that, and that's exactly it. We cannot allow this type of behavior to happen. Otherwise, I guarantee you, we're going to continue to have Americans or immigrants that have come to America legally, and even illegals getting killed on our roads. I don't want anybody getting killed. But most of all, I don't want American citizens getting killed. So Florida law and regulations require states to ensure that CDL applicants pass a driver's test. They also have to pass the English proficiency test. They also have to demonstrate appropriate immigration status. But California and Washington are not following the law. Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier brought that original jurisdiction suit against those states for their sanctuary policies, for their refusal to check immigration status, for their refusal to ensure at a basic level whether or not the people they are giving driver's licenses to can speak English or read English or even drive a car, let alone an 80,000-pound tractor trailer. Iowa and 16 other states backed the efforts of Uthmeier and the state of Florida, and the Supreme Court turned it down. They didn't even say why they were turning it down. Thomas blasted the abdication of Florida and all of these other states that joined in on the lawsuit. This court declines to hear Florida's claims, even though it has nowhere else to bring them. Please do tell Supreme Court of the United States, what should the United States do? What should any of these United States do if there's a problem that we have with the actions of another state? The actions of another state are infringing upon the civil rights and civil liberties of the people of another state. The only thing that we have is to go to the Supreme Court. And for them to turn it down and not even tell us why they're turning it down or give us some sort of a clue as to what they expect us to do in the meantime, it's unacceptable. He reiterated the Constitution gives the Supreme Court the exclusive jurisdiction over controversies between states, and the court has no business inventing discretion to dodge these cases. The funny thing is they didn't even invent a reason for it. They just rejected it and just sat there stone-faced. If states cannot bring these disputes to the Supreme Court, they have no judicial forum by which they can have these things adjudicated. So it is pretty shocking that the Supreme Court has decided to do this. I don't know what the next move is. Can they appeal it? I mean, the Supreme Court is it. If the Supreme Court says no, then I don't think there's anywhere else to go. So it's unfortunate, but it is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable, and there's nothing else to do. So anyways, stay safe out there, friends. Stay frosty. Keep an eye on tractor trailers that might be driving around you. Also, keep an eye out for tractor trailers that might be coming up behind you, because you never know when they're just going to plow into the back of your car. Maybe everybody here should be driving a big, heavy piece of machinery. That's the only way you can make sure that you're not going to get totally squished. Buck Wayne is now a monthly supporter over on Rumble. Thank you so much for that, Buck Wayne. I appreciate you, buddy. All right, now, we are going to hear a clip next from President Trump's cabinet meeting, which, as usual, was a real banger. Before we get into that, though, I do have a very quick message from our friends over on Rumble. You guys, if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, listen to this, because America is about to hit a major, major milestone. That's right, our 250th birthday. 250 years of blood, sweat, grit, and sacrifice, and right now is the best time that I can possibly think of to celebrate that. It's also the perfect time to make sure that your children and grandchildren, that hell, the entirety of the next generation, understand why this is important, why America matters. For some people, it's not enough to just live here. There are plenty of people who live here and simply don't understand the beauty, the importance of the American experiment. But there is a guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. And it's quite honestly the best way to introduce those kids, the next generation, to exactly what America stands for, how it began, and why it is so important to continue to fight for it. The ideas they fought for then still matter today. And this guide is going to send those kids back to the very moment when those brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, putting their pen to paper, their names on that document, knowing that they were essentially possibly signing away their very lives. They were risking their lives for freedom. And this guide is not going to water that moment down. It's not going to make it feel like boring schoolwork. It's going to be something that's really going to draw them in. So if you care about raising children who know where this country came from and why it is so worth preserving, this is something you're going to want to grab. The best part is that it is totally free with this special offer. All you do is pay the $2 for shipping and postage. So to get it, head on over to freeusabirthday.com or use that QR code on screen. That is freeusabirthday.com, and the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is there for those kids today. Because America's story matters, let's make sure the next generation understands it. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out with us. I do appreciate it. All right, so let us get into President Trump's farewell statement to Tulsi Gabbard. This will probably be her final meeting in the cabinet, with the full cabinet, with President Trump in the cabinet. And he really did have some nice things to say about her. So let's go. Oh, also, I changed things up on the stream here, right there. So there is now a stream goal. It's not necessarily for just this stream. I'm just going to leave it up there. But it's a goal through Ko-Fi, because it's the only way that I can do this. So ko-fi.com/redpill78. When you donate through Ko-Fi, like say you're on YouTube and you want to donate, but you can't because I'm demonetized on YouTube. There's no super chats over there. Of course, we have Rumble rants on Rumble. We have gold pills on Pilled. But if you go to ko-fi.com/redpill78 and you donate, you can leave a comment. It will bring up a notification on screen. It will be President Trump dancing. It'll say, "Let's make America great again." And then your donation will be added to that goal, and the bar will continually move across the screen until that goal is reached. So thank you very much for those who have supported through Ko-Fi in the past or wherever you support the show.
Before asking Vice President Vance to speak about these efforts, I want to express our tremendous gratitude to our outgoing Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who's a terrific person, actually. Come up with some findings that were pretty good. And Tulsi's worked tirelessly to restore trust and focus on the intelligence and with the intelligence community. They all respected her. They listened to her. She gave us leads that were pretty much, people thought they were dead and they weren't dead. They were right there, and she was able to expose a lot of things that we used at the FBI with Cash and with Todd and with JD and everybody else. It was amazing. She dramatically reformed the Office of Director of National Intelligence and cutting the staff by 40%, and she prevented countless terrorists and cartel members from entering the United States. She exposed mountains of evidence related to the Russia hoax, probably the greatest hoax in the history of our country. Although, when you look at the fraud coming out, there's a lot of them. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of them. But the Russia hoax, a great hoax, a very dangerous hoax too, and revoked security clearances of officials involved, and she declassified numerous historic documents of special public interest, including related to the JFK and RFK assassinations, which everybody wanted to see. And we're now releasing a lot of things having to do with space. You know, it's people are very interested in it. It actually became the #1 topic. We're releasing a lot of information having to do with extraterrestrial things, and people are totally fascinated by it. It's amazing. I wasn't sure if they would enjoy it. It's literally trending #1. Can you believe it? So a lot of people out there are like it. But we're releasing all of that information. And Tulsi, we're praying for you and for your husband. Her husband's not feeling great, but he's going to feel great soon. You're going to get him better. And he's a wonderful guy. So just say hello and thank you for the great work you've done. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, so Tulsi Gabbard's work is not done. She's got another month left, and she has a couple of very important investigations that she is still working on. From what I understand, she will be putting out the results of those investigations, which include her physical and forensic investigation into electronic voting machines.
America great again.
Look at that from SuperRoot. That was quick. Thank you for that, SuperRoot. Let me see what that message is. Oh, also, City Jen yesterday supported after the show was over, but my stream was still going. Yeah, City Jen says, thank you for all you do. I've been with you from the start. Thank you so much for that, Jen. Definitely remember your name, and it's good to see you. Now, let's see what SuperRoot had to say. SuperRoot, thank you for the $10 donation. Says, thanks again for bringing it every day. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. I wish there was some way I could get these the messages to show up on there. Now, you guys heard President Trump say, make America great again. Please do tell me, make America great again. Yes, no, hopeful theorist, it is unfortunately only through Ko-Fi. None of the other platforms offer this. Now, if I was only on YouTube, or I was allowed to monetize through YouTube, then it would be able to aggregate all of the platforms together. I am a dissident podcaster. Unfortunately, I am on all of these other platforms. Now, the one thing that I will say, when you donate on Rumble, that's why I have the Rumble chat on there, and that's why I have the Pill chat on there, because your Rumble rant will come up, and you know that I'm going to read it. I'm also going to thank you personally, so please do not feel that your kindness and your support is not appreciated. I'm just trying to find ways to make sure that I can recognize everybody. All right. Glad to hear you heard it, Trumpet. That is exactly the way it was supposed to be. All right. So continuing on from Tulsi Gabbard.
Make America
look
great
at that.
again.
Also, Trisha, Q Patriot Texas. Thank you for that, Trisha. And look, the goal is moving. That is awesome. Okay. So let me real quick read that as well. And Trisha, thank you very much. $50, very generous, no message, but I really do appreciate your support. All right. Now, as we know, Pam Bondi has left the Department of Justice, but it was announced that she is also privately battling thyroid cancer. Let me say this, you guys. First, we hear that Susie Wiles has developed some form of rare aggressive cancer. Then we learn that Abraham Gabbard has also developed some form of rare aggressive bone cancer. And now today, we learn that Pam Bondi is also privately battling a form of thyroid cancer. That is 3 people connected to President Trump's administration in quick succession who have been stricken with some form of cancer. Something tells me that that is just a little bit above the norm. Now, I'm sure people are going to say, well, maybe they're all vaccinated. Maybe they all got the clot shot. Well, you know, I mean, it seems like the people who got the clot shots have already come down with the cancer that they were likely to contract as a result of it. But as I mentioned, when Abraham was diagnosed with his cancer, the top institutional foe of Tulsi Gabbard seems to have been the Central Intelligence Agency. And the Central Intelligence Agency was also, of course, deeply involved in all of the deep state plots to stop President Trump the first time around. And it would certainly not be out of the pocket for me to suggest that it is entirely within reason that each and every one of these people, because of their proximity to President Trump and maybe the important work that they were doing within the administration, could be the reason why they have developed cancer. Now, of course, there will be people out there who say, Zach, you're a conspiracy theorist. That doesn't make any sense. All I'm doing is throwing it out there because I certainly notice a pattern. There is a definite pattern here. Now, not only that, in terms of Pam Bondi battling thyroid cancer, but she has also been appointed to another position within President Trump's administration. This is different from what they said initially when she left. President Trump said that she was going to go out and join the private sector someplace. But apparently President Trump has appointed her to an advisory panel that's focused on artificial intelligence policy. President Trump, of course, dismissed Pam Bondi in May, but she's now going to be returning back to the White House to serve on the Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, according to Axios. I'm sorry, there is one more thing I want to mention about the cancers. President Trump was famously responsible for right to try in his first administration. And I think that each and every one of us knows that there are many different treatments that are available for cancer, which are not necessarily accepted by mainstream medical science. But of course, Bobby Kennedy at the HHS has also been responsible for onboarding some really important new things, which includes the medication by Dr. Patrick Song, I think his name is, whoever the guy is that owns the paper in Los Angeles. Of course, there is also a trial on ivermectin and fenbendazole that was talked about happening down here in Florida, but HHS was also working on that as well. It would be really interesting if, as a result of all of these people being diagnosed with cancer, a new and safe alternative treatment for cancer was to be announced and made available to the people of the United States of America, something outside of the pharmaceutical industrial complex. So certainly continue to pray for all of these people. Pray for anybody in the United States that's been stricken with cancer and who is unfortunately not able to get the information which could potentially heal them. You know, even with what I do, I've got family members who have been diagnosed with cancer. They've been battling cancer for years, and I can't get them to listen to me on this stuff. And for some people, that would drive them crazy. It definitely pains me to know that I feel like I have information that could save someone that I love, but because they're so wrapped up in this this pattern of thinking related to what is coming from their doctor, they just haven't been willing to listen to me on it. And it's really sad. I've given them the information so many times. So I'm hoping that this leads to something else and not just a tragic battle with cancer that we have to see these people going through. All right. Now, the role was announced by David Sachs. I guess he's a billionaire podcaster. Winning the AI race means not only beating China, but also clearing bureaucratic hurdles thrown up by state legislatures and woke politicians in D.C., he said. No one is better positioned to support PCAST in this mission and to advise the president on legal and regulatory barriers than Pam Bondi, because she was a fairly successful attorney. And in addition to being the attorney general, you'll have your own opinions about her, I know, but then, of course, also being the Attorney General of Florida. President Trump in this picture here is interacting with her back during the Memphis operation. So this group is going to be focused on AI policy and competition with China. Bondi is expected to help coordinate between the government and tech titans on the panel. Bondi is also going to take on a new role related to national infrastructure initiatives. So it seems like she's going to have a number of roles within the administration still. Pam has been an enormously valuable asset to the president's team, and I'm thrilled for her and for all of us that she's going to remain involved in confronting some of the most important issues the administration faces, that is J.D. Vance. Now, I would also suggest to you guys, because I know that there are people out there who feel that Pam Bondi was totally ineffectual as the AG, that she did nothing of note, that she just went and did too many interviews and it was annoying. And, you know, I've got my own criticisms of Pam Bondi. She's not that great in front of a camera. I felt like when she was testifying before Congress, it didn't work for me. There's a way to handle yourself, and I just felt like, you know, me personally, I wouldn't have done it that way. But I do believe that the work Pam Bondi did, although perhaps not immediately visible, set the stage for what Todd Blanche is now doing. He's, you know, incredibly effective. They're really hitting the ground running. And I don't know that that could have happened if it wasn't for the work Pam Bondi did behind the scenes. And on top of that, she got us a bunch of wins in the Supreme Court. So Pam Bondi did some great stuff. I just don't think she gets the credit for it. But I also don't think that the president would welcome her immediately back into the administration if he also didn't appreciate the work that she had done or believe that that she was helpful in pushing the agenda forward. Principled Enigma says Pam Bondi did what was needed to lay the groundwork for Todd Blanche to hit the ground running. Yes, I agree with you as well. All right, so yeah, so that's basically it. Pam Bondi is coming back just in a number of different roles. All right. Also, thank you to Filter Dog, who says Jill Biden to CBS on the 2024 debate. I was frightened because I had never seen Joe like that. I thought he was having a stroke. Well, that's interesting that even Jill Biden thought that. All right. Now I have some incredible updates for you from Secretary of Homeland Security Mark Wayne Mullen. First of all, he makes a comment here about the situation currently taking place at the ICE facility in New Jersey. Now, it was reported that these detainees were on a hunger strike. Well, it turns out the hunger strike is because they want ethnic food. They want different food. And I'm sorry, but y'all aren't on vacation. You're not even supposed to be here. So if you want to eat, you better eat the bologna and American cheese on white bread that the guards are going to be serving you.
It shows this radical left Democrats' priorities when they decide to go out and protest a detention center where we're housing rapists, child predators, murderers, drug dealers, and they choose Memorial Day of all the time to go protest something that they say that that it's because they're on a hunger strike when there was only a handful of individuals that was refusing to eat because they want their ethnic group or their ethnic right food. Well, they can go back to their country and get whatever food they want. The fact is, we're giving them the calories they want. This isn't Holiday Inn. We're giving them sanitation. But for the Democrats and the governor, like Governor Sherrill and Senator Kim and Senator Booker, to go out and do something like this of all the days is very frustrating. And we see Antifa signs are literally out there. The local police literally refusing to respond. They barricade it, not allowing our employees to come in and out. ICE has to go out there, remove the barricade, and then you have one of the senators complain because he got splattered with a pepper ball. I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. So again, you guys are not here on vacation. If you are detained by an authority because you broke the law, I'm sorry if you don't like the food, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Now, you are welcome to go back to your home country. Unfortunately, many of these people are fighting their deportation. Even more than that, Mark Wayne Mullen is now confirming an action that President Trump had suggested several months ago. Homeland Security is now finally actually drawing up the plans to suspend international flights into sanctuary cities until they stop protecting illegal aliens. When I talked about this before, I talked about the brilliance of this model because of the immediate financial impact this would have on sanctuary cities that are refusing to work with ICE. If you've got a major hub like, say, Boston, Logan International Airport, and they refuse in Boston to work with ICE, to, at the very least, just let them know when they pick up an illegal alien who's raped 5 kids or killed a family of 4 because they were drunk driving. Just let them know so they can pick them up, and then they won't go back out on the streets. But instead, what the Boston mayor has forced Boston cops to do is just to allow these people to go free. They do it all over Massachusetts, but they let them go free. They're free to go out and commit more crimes, rape more kids, murder more moms. And yet they still want to have the ability to do international flights. Now, you know who's at these international terminals is Department of Homeland Security. They have to process everybody coming in and essentially make sure that they're not a danger to society. Now, if they decide that they don't want to process these people anymore, then all of that money from those international flights coming into Boston immediately dries up. Those international flyers are going to choose a different city to go to, and they just might decide that they're not going to go to Boston at all. They might decide that the difficulty of getting into the country necessitates the changing of their plans. It would be immediately financially devastating for any sanctuary city that is otherwise requiring the use of the help of DHS. You pick one. Pick any airport in California. Boom, there you go. Pick any airport in any Democrat-run hellhole, and you've got the exact same thing. So that means also, unfortunately, you're going to have a lot more traffic coming in to airports that are not in sanctuary cities or sanctuary states. However, there will be an immediate financial boon to those places. So the Trump administration is now drawing up these plans. They will suspend immigration and customs processing at airports in these Democrat-run sanctuary cities. Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen said the administration is right now drawing up the plans to halt processing at airports in these Democrat-run jurisdictions because they refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. He made these comments in an interview yesterday with Sean Hannity. So let's go ahead and hear the clip from Secretary Mullins. And actually, yeah, okay, so this is the clip right here. I just wanted to make sure. So, yeah, here we go.
Especially the fact that local law enforcement wouldn't respond. And so I visited with the White House today, Sean, and I said, you know, if they're going to not allow us to go out and arrest the worst of the worst, and then when we call for assistance at the facilities, that the street, it belongs to the city. If it belonged to us, we would take care of it, but it belongs to the city, and they're barricading our employees from coming in and out of the facility, then why are we processing international flights into the airport there? And we are currently, which we're not initiating yet, but we're currently drawing up plans to say, listen, in these sanctuary cities where the local radical left Democrats aren't allowing us to do our job and enforce federal laws, then we shouldn't be processing international flights into their cities either, because they don't want us to enforce immigration, but they want us to process immigration at their facilities. Nothing about that makes sense to me.
Let me tell you.
We're talking billions of dollars here, guys. Billions of dollars every single year would be lost to these locations. Many of them are already in dire financial straits because you've got so many people leaving these cities. You've got so many people choosing to go someplace else. You've got the people who are moving there are also not taxpayers. They are a net drain on the system. So this proposal would impact some of the worst places that you probably don't want to go, and then also some that many people here are still reminiscently fond of, because you remember a time when it wasn't a Democrat hellhole. Places like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, Denver, Philadelphia, and Newark, New Jersey. Right here, Markwayne Mullin also says that 7 out of the 10 safest cities in the United States of America cooperate with ICE, and that's obviously not a coincidence.
Safest cities in the United States cooperate with DHS and ICE. Every single day, Sean, I get a report of criminals that were convicted and released by sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that were rapists, that were child molesters, that were murderers, that were drug dealers. And all we ask is that these cities cooperate with us and give us and honor our detainer, because when we find out they've got them, we ask them, hey, hold on to them and we'll come pick them up. And they go ahead and release them in the streets, and then we have to go find them again. The Democrats right now, this radical left Democrat Party, is for open borders, and they're more interested in protecting the criminals than they are protecting the constituents. They're allowing these criminals to run amok in their cities. Benny Thompson, Democrat ranking member on Homeland in Mississippi, says that he's willing to shut down DHS again in September, which puts our mission to protecting the homeland at risk. President Trump and I had long conversations with leadership saying, how can we take ICE and CBP off the table and keep them from threatening the homeland and putting our American constituents at risk?
Well, in order to do that, it's very simple. They just need to accept the rule of law. Accept the rule of law. Cities will get safer. People's lives will get better. Quality of life will increase. The financial drain by these illegal aliens will no longer exist. Sanctuary cities right now, limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities, are doing nothing but making the lives of the people who live there worse. The DOJ has also previously identified multiple cities and states that they believe, through practice, are obstructing immigration enforcement. This proposal would reportedly halt not only international passenger arrivals, but also cargo processing at affected airports. You hear that? It's one thing to stop bodies from being able to fly into an airport, but to stop the actual flow of goods, products, cargo coming into airports, that would be even more devastating. There is a hell of a lot more money coming in terms of cargo than simply the bodies that are flying into these airports. Mullins has previously spoken about the similar idea, pulling customs and CBP from these airports. And now that it's finally happening, my goodness, you guys, this would immediately decimate these cities. We need to do this, and we need to do it immediately. The only problem is Sean Duffy has expressed opposition to the idea. He said, we have people from all around the world and around the country that need to be able to fly to all different kinds of places. We shouldn't shut down air travel in a state that doesn't agree with our politics. Sean, I tend to like you. I tend to like your ideas and like your statements, but this one I am going to disagree with, because sometimes a little bit of tough love is what people need to start doing the right thing. I think all of us can look back on our youth. There was probably in each and every one of your lives at least one moment where your dad had to lay down the law. You had to get a good ass whooping or a tan hiding in order for you to finally realize that maybe you shouldn't be such a prick. Maybe you should listen to your parents. Maybe you should be nicer to your mom next time. And a lot of times, a good ass whooping is all it takes for people to start doing the right thing. And it is high time that we put an ass whooping on these sanctuary jurisdictions. Now, here is an example right here of Democrat policies in action. A video was released from the Texas DPS, who is assisting border agents looking to catch people that are coming across the border illegally. This is Eagle Pass, one of the worst places where much of this traffic was occurring in. But they just caught a group of Chinese special interest aliens. They were actually dressed in camouflage. They were trying to evade detection at the southern border. They also appear to have attempted to run from Texas and federal authorities as they were being pulled over. Take a look.
Hey, Manos!
Go. 343 dirham.
Guys bailing out right now.
Like, they're out in the middle of nowhere. Where the hell did they think that they're going to run to? I'm just going to run out into the middle of this agricultural field right here, and we'll see if I can get away from these cops. Not going to happen.
Hey, Manos! Get the bike! Get the Come here. You okay? You okay? Okay? Show sus documentos, por favor.
I can just see it. He's like, put on this New York Yankees hat. Nobody will look at you twice. Alexander Rodriguez Acosta, Phoenix, Arizona, smuggling of persons ×6. Yosidevlis Nunez Acosta, Phoenix, Arizona, smuggling persons ×6. Looks like a couple of brothers thought they were going to get away with it, but they did not. All right, I want to see if we have any more information about who these special interest Chinese nationals were. All right, so Texas DPS Lieutenant Chris Oliveira has just reported that K-9 Bona and U.S. Border Patrol agents working under Operation Lone Star, yes, I love Operation Lone Star, apprehended 7 migrants on a private ranch in Maverick County, including individuals from Mexico, Guatemala, India, Ecuador, and Cuba. Shortly after, 12 more were taken into custody, 6 of them Chinese nationals wearing camouflage clothing. These are not typical border crossers. Chinese military-age men entering the United States in tactical gear raises serious national security concerns. They are being classified as special interest aliens due to their country of origin and evasion tactics. This comes amid repeated warnings about large numbers of military-age Chinese males crossing illegally. What is the CCP's intention? Are these reconnaissance, sabotage assets, or part of a larger infiltration strategy? Americans must stay vigilant. Our border is not secure, and these incidents are escalating. Now, the good news is they obviously caught these guys, and I don't think there's anybody that they haven't caught since President Trump came into office. But the fact that they're wearing these fatigues, definitely concerning. At least we got them. Hopefully, they're going to get some information out of them. All right, now, also, Marco Rubio here in the cabinet meeting earlier today, revealing that the U.S. has now secured deportation agreements with 20 third world countries so that we can deport these illegal sons of bitches out of our nation. DHS is using that as leverage to get illegals to stop putting up fights to go back to their home countries. So if you tell them they're going to Cameroon, for example, they're going to give up and say, you know what, just send me back to El Salvador. At least I speak the language. Let's take a listen.
One, you touched upon the border and security. Part of securing our border is dealing with the people that are in this country unlawfully, many of whom do not want to go back to the country that they originally came from for a variety of reasons. Either we can't send them there or some judge ties us up. And one of the key things we have achieved is now 20 countries have signed third country national agreements, meaning these are safe countries where individuals who refuse to go back to their country of origin can be sent to that country instead. We've gotten 20 countries now around the world who have signed agreements that allow us to deport people to those places. What often happens when you go to the person who's here unlawfully and say, we're going to send you to this third country, is all of a sudden they decide they'd rather go back to their home country instead. So it gives the ability to enforce our laws, and we work very closely with the Department of Homeland Security on that front. Once you touch.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, who wants to go to a shithole third world nation that they know is going to probably have much worse conditions than they would otherwise if they go back to their home country? I love the fact that they've done this. Now, I saw somebody in the chat asking about the hat. The hat is a Donald Trump United States of America 250th anniversary hat. Looks like it's got Mount Rushmore, an eagle, an American flag, and then the lettering on it. I believe it says 4547 on the side. There's an American flag on the other side, and then Donald Trump has autographed them for each member of the cabinet. Maybe you can pick them up on the White House website or something like that. All right, so love to hear it. All right, now, Ken Paxton won his election last night, but there is a bit of a controversy which is following him into the general election. And the way that I've seen it reported on, I think, is very disingenuous. I don't know if people are amplifying a disingenuous message because they're being paid by John Cornyn's people, or because they are, left-wing people who simply want to appeal to the heartstrings and sensibilities of conservatives. But I have seen this reported in a number of different ways. But the headline here is that pedophile goes free early after Texas AG's plea deal. Prosecutors say their hands were tied. Now, I also saw somebody in the chat the other day say something about President Trump. President Trump, if he cared about America, he would not allow these judges to behave in this way. Okay, well, we've got something called, the separation of powers here in the United States. You've got the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And those are separate but equal branches of government, theoretically, which have their own unique powers so that one branch of government can't subvert and take over the other branch of government. We've got major problems within the legislative and the judicial. President Trump has done quite a bit of work to reform the executive branch, but President Trump can't just put out an executive decree and say, go arrest all these judges and throw them in prison or stop this judge from behaving in this way. There is a process to deal with all of these things. And to ask President Trump to do anything other than that is to essentially ask him to take on the powers of a dictator. And we don't want that. That's not what we're looking to do. Because if President Trump does that, then whoever comes after him can do it as well. And the American experiment is over. So President Trump, from everything that I've seen, has attempted to work within the boundaries of the power of the executive branch to fix things and to push the envelope when necessary, but also not to subvert the office of the president. He's been very careful not to do that, unlike others who have come before him. So we can't just ask President Trump to be a dictator, even though there are times when I admit, it sounds attractive to me. The idea of President Trump just doing something because it would make us feel better. But we can't do that. That's just simply not the way that we need to behave. I don't want anybody else doing that, because as soon as President Trump is gone, or as soon as somebody that is like him is gone, the other side, which is the deep state, is going to take that power and they're going to use it in a much, much more perverse fashion. And they've already done enough. They've already done enough to subvert the power of the government. And this is what we're trying to get rid of. So Ken Paxton's office was prosecuting a sexual abuser, okay? His name is Adam Hoffman, and he was a former attorney from Waco. Now, so the problem is that the AG's office put him on trial for sexually abusing a child, and that child testified in the trial of Mr. Hoffman. The problem is that the jury was deadlocked. The jury could not come to a unanimous decision. It was 7 in favor of finding him guilty and 5 in favor of finding him not guilty. And so essentially, the prosecutor's office, the attorney general's office, wanted to retry him, and they didn't want to give him a punishment in the course of this hung jury trial because they wanted the ability to go after him and put him on trial and send him to prison for good. Well, the judge said, well, I'm still going to give him 60 days. And then he was let off for good behavior after 30 days. And he doesn't have to file as a sex offender. But this is not because the Attorney General's office gave him some super deal because Ken Paxton loves pedophiles. The problem is that they're going to be unable to try this man again because the victim has refused to testify. The victim said, I don't want to go through this again. I am not willing to put myself through this. I just want to put it behind me and I want to live my life. And so the problem is not that Ken Paxton wants to protect pedophiles. The problem is that they're not going to be able to put this guy on trial again. And they already put him on trial and they had the victim testify, and you couldn't get 12 people in Texas to say that they believed that this guy was guilty. So that should tell you something about the actual case that they have against him, the amount of evidence that they have to put him in prison. They simply don't have it, which is the really unfortunate part. And this guy is going to get what's coming to him. Karma is a bitch, and God is always watching. And I think that considering the fact that this is Texas, he's going to get what's coming to him. So the prosecutors in the Attorney General's office put out a statement, and they basically said, you know, our hands are tied. We are constrained by the justice system. They said, as with any child sexual assault trial, participation in this process took a massive toll on every witness that was involved, especially the child. Unfortunately, that jury could not reach a unanimous verdict, resulting in a hung jury by a vote of 5-7. 7 voting to convict, 5 voting to not convict. Nonetheless, our office was prepared to retry the case and seek a conviction. However, following his experience in the first trial, the child made it clear he would not voluntarily testify at a second trial. The child emphasized he preferred to move on with his life and prioritize his mental and emotional health over subjection to the unimaginably difficult position of once again testifying against the man who abused him. So retrying this case would have required forcing the victim to testify against his will, and prosecutors were simply not willing to do that. They said, you're welcome to second guess our decisions, but our hope is that you and others have taken an interest in this case would respect the child's privacy and his decision on how to move forward with his life. So really, that is the story right there. It's not that Ken Paxton just loves pedophiles. The truth of the matter is that this kid is so traumatized, and the only thing they have to prove this guy's guilt is what the kid is saying. So I thought that was important because I know that this is going to come up again as we get closer to the general election. Now, Ken Paxton won a resounding victory over John Cornyn yesterday. The race was called within 1 minute of the polls closing, and President Trump immediately congratulated Ken Paxton on his victory. He said that he's going to be doing some nice, big, beautiful rallies for Ken and Texas. This is going to be fun. Now, Paxton beat Cornyn by nearly 30 points. Again, the race was called within 1 minute of the polls closing at 9:01 p.m. Ken Paxton gave his victory speech, and we are going to listen to a portion of that victory speech, but I wanted to read President Trump's congratulations right here. Congratulations to Ken Paxton on such a tremendous win, and to John Cornyn for having run a strong and powerful race, but more importantly, having had a truly great career. That's really twisting the knife for John Cornyn right there. John will remain my friend for a long time to come, as we both watch Ken become a fantastic, common-sense senator, one who is respected by all. His opponent, Alfred E. Newman, Maybe the worst Texas candidate I have ever seen. A strong open borders candidate. He is weak on crime, believes there are 6 genders, is insulting to Jesus Christ, will never support the military, was a big mask wearer until recently, and is a vegan who dislikes meat. Not exactly a good way to be if you're wanting to win an election in Texas. Jasmine Crockett, a very low individual who is no relation to the legendary frontiersman Davy Crockett, would have been a far better choice for the Democrats. I will have some nice, big, beautiful rallies for Ken. Texas, this is going to be fun. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump. Now, in case you don't know, Ken Paxton's opponent is not Alfred E. Newman. His name is James Tallarico, and he apparently dreams about trans kids. He's a weird, weird person. But I wanted to show you the results here. If we take a look at the map of Texas, Ken Paxton won 252 out of 254 counties in the state of Texas. The only 2 counties that John Cornyn won is this one right here. This is Travis County. That's where Austin is. And, you know, there's a lot of lefties in Austin. And he also won tiny little Kennedy County, which is down here on the Gulf of America, very close to the U.S.-Mexico border. The funny thing about him winning Kennedy County is that there's only 8 registered voters. There's only 8 registered voters in all of Kennedy County. And John Cornyn won 6 out of the 8 registered voters. So it's not much of a win for John Cornyn down there. But Ken Paxton literally won the entirety of the state of Texas. This was a resounding victory for Ken there. So very, very cool to see that coming up. Now, let's go ahead and take a listen to Ken's victory speech right here. Looks like at the end of the night, John Cornyn had 456,754 votes. Ken Paxton had 813,888 votes. Yes, much, much, much bigger margin of victory than I think John Cornyn was hoping for. Okay, let me go ahead and get past this commercial real quick.
I want to give this to you for free. This is the quick draw system. It lets you carry a gift.
You see.
All right, so here is a clip from Ken's victory speech.
You see, I'm not just running against the Democrats. I'm running to deliver for you, just as I have as Attorney General. I'm running to lower your cost of living because you deserve to be able to buy a home, afford groceries, and have a high quality of health care without being forced to stay up at night worrying about how you're going to pay your monthly premium or pay off your debt. In the Senate, I'll support President Trump's America First agenda and finally secure our nation's elections by passing the Save America Act.
The only thing that sucks is that it's entirely possible that based upon John Thune and the obstructionists who are now being voted out of the Senate, we may not be able to get the Save America Act passed before November, which is going to make the results of the November election all that more interesting. Is it possible that the Democrats and the deep state will still be able to steal the election in the way that they have before if they no longer have access to capital, which is clearly not coming in from the people, and it's also clearly not coming in from the NGO industrial complex? It's not going to be able to come in from Code Pink and Neville Roy Singham's network or George Soros's network, because they're all now under criminal investigation, and Treasury is watching very intently the path and the mapping of every single dollar connected to all of those non-governmental organizations and 501c3 organizations that are connected to that network. I think that probably what's going to happen is that the left and the deep state are going to claim that President Trump has stolen the election, and this will be part of the reveal of exactly how they were stealing elections previously. And it will be incredibly hypocritical and ironic to see them crying foul about elections being stolen, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to admit that elections were stolen previously. They'll say, well, we know how elections are being stolen because obviously we know how to steal elections. Here is Ken Paxton one more time. Let me actually just get
headsets are too bulky. Ladies and gentlemen.
All right, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear the audio from this, because I just realized that something may be turned off. Tell me if you guys hear an echo when I play this audio right here.
Please welcome.
Actually, I already know that you can hear an echo because I hear an echo. Okay, here we go.
The next United States Senator for the Republic of Texas, Ken Paxton.
I feel speechless in a way, but you know, they're gonna let me do that. Wow. To the people in this room, to the people watching at home.
CCP money was included in all of those various sources that I was talking about earlier. Also, that would be part of money coming in through Act Blue, which is also under criminal investigation.
And to the people of the great state of Texas, tonight, we just made history.
And it's not just Ken Paxton making history. It's obviously President Trump with all of these endorsements. It's all of these rhinos and the obstructionists that are being voted out in both the House and the Senate, and obviously at the state level as well. You've got all of these people who have just kind of taken it for granted that they would remain in power because they've been in power and because they're connected to the power. But people have shown that if you're not willing to support that which advances America's interests, we're not going to support you, and we're going to work as hard as we can to get rid of you. And not everybody who is a rhino or an obstructionist is up for re-election right now, but those people are coming up very, very soon. And if we can control the election system, ensuring that it's free and fair and not fake and gay, getting rid of all of the different types of fraud, which I think that Tulsi Gabbard's report is going to be a huge part of that, it may not be necessary for the Save America Act to be passed. And it will just be another signal on who we need to make sure is no longer sitting in government. There are just so many different ways that the deep state had access to capital funding that they were using to subvert the United States of America. And President Trump has quite literally gotten rid of 99% of it. Principled Enigma says it's becoming very clear that the Constitution is definitely not a Democrat. In other words, their entire platform and frame of mind is unconstitutional. Yes, sir, you are correct. Let's see. Filter Dog. The Missouri Supreme Court has just upheld the state's new 7 Republican, 1 Democrat congressional map, allowing it to go into effect for the 2026 midterms. That is amazing. Thank you, sir. Also, new Tallow poll shows him up 7%, but, oh, hold on, we'll look at that in just a moment, because Brandon Gill spoke at Ken Paxton's victory party last night, and he had a couple of thoughts about James Tallow as well. We're going to get past this commercial, and then we'll play it.
If your ringing isn't
And you know what that means? That means that we are finally going to take our country back, aren't we? That means that we are sending a fighter from Texas to Washington, somebody who's going to stand up for our values, aren't we? Somebody who's going to fight to keep the border secure, to deport illegal aliens, and yes, to get the Save America Act passed. Because it's not good enough anymore in Washington to just say the right things. We need somebody who's going to do the right things. And that person is Senator Ken Paxton.
I believe that Senator Ken Paxton is definitely one of those people that is going to do the right thing. Now, he also said, what kind of a grown man dreams about trans kids? That would be James Tallow.
Hey, now that I got
Hold on. I got it. Now it's like super loud on the audio. I got to turn it down. There we go. Yeah, that's what we need right there. Turn it down. There we go. Yeah, it's a pretty weird thing to say. So, in a new ad, Tallarico is hammered over these past statements, and I believe this may be the ad that Filter Dog just sent over, but... Oh, great. Hang on just a second. Yeah, it was muted. Anyways, he just said he dreams about trans kids. Hold on, I'll fix it.
The Democrats have a weird candidate.
God is non-binary. There are many more than two biological sexes. In fact, there are 6. It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption. The American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us. Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity. Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front. No need to sit and cry over, your whiteness or your masculinity. They're gonna call me a radical leftist.
Something that you love, that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children.
The Democrats have a weird candidate.
Low T Tallarico, too weak for Texas. Lone Star Liberty PAC is responsible.
Low T Tallarico. I'd say that that's pretty on point. Let me go ahead and pull up the tweet that was just given. All right, so shock poll, Democrat James Tallarico leads Ken Paxton by 7% in the Texas U.S. Senate election. Now, I want everybody to remember that in general, polls are done disingenuously because it depends on who is taking the poll. They want to see the results that they want to display. So right here, this graphic is based on a public policy polling that Tallarico's internal poll was doing, and it was commissioned and paid for by the pro-Tallarico Lone Star Rising Super PAC. So that is a perfect example of the audience of the poll being taken from people who are likely to vote the way that the pollster wants them to. So James Tallarico paid for this poll. It's unsurprising to me that his people are saying that they want to vote for him. So Amuse asks Grok to confirm that Tallarico's Super PAC, Lone Star Rising PAC, paid for the poll and confirmed that the polling was commissioned for internal Tallarico campaign use and confirmed that it sampled 643 likely voters. Grok says, yes, all 3 confirmed. Lone Star Rising, pro-Tallarico Super PAC, commissioned and paid for the public policy polling survey. It was conducted as an internal poll for use by the Tallarico-aligned effort. It was fielded May 22nd through the 23rd with a sample of 643 likely voters as stated on the poll graphic and PPP release. So Politico and the poll memo explicitly attribute it to the PAC. So this poll means nothing at the end of the day. All right, now here is another ad for James Tallarico. This is actually paid for by Republicans, and it also describes Tallarico's position on a number of important issues.
Move over, Davy Crockett. There's a new Texas trailblazer in town, and their name is James Tallarico. The man who bragged, our office is the first in the history of Texas to add pronouns to our official business cards.
I am running around like a crazy person today,
spreading his white skin wherever he goes.
I am not a perfect Christian. Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity, and it's a painful process.
Bearing the cross of white skin and unambiguous masculinity.
I was a big nerd in high school, had never played sports. I probably shouldn't out myself like this. Sex is a spectrum, and oftentimes it can be very ambiguous. God is both masculine and feminine and everything in between. God is non-binary.
Straight from Revelations in the woke James Bible.
I want us all to be aware of that. There are many more than two biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
And on the 7th day, they rested. But not James Tallarico. He built an ark big enough for all creatures.
To be able to write legislation that benefits not just the people, but also our animal friends.
Just like the Supreme Court said, 1 cow, 1 vote.
Now, existential, that we try to reduce our meat consumption. That's the right thing to do and the moral thing to do.
The 11th commandment, thou shalt not smoke brisket.
I am proud to say that our campaign has officially become a non-meat campaign.
So step aside, Sam Houston. Tallarico's bravery towers over Texas. He's fighting for all 6 genders and tens of thousands of species.
I guess we just have a different moral yardstick.
You know what insults Jesus?
Binary white people who eat barbecue and remember the Alamo?
There's only been one perfect Christian.
And they certainly weren't a carnivorous Caucasian binary Homo sapien, according to the woke Gospel of James.
They're gonna call me a radical leftist, un-Texan, un-American.
And bar none, the weirdest candidate for Senate the Lone Star State has ever seen.
That was good. That was so good. Thou shalt not smoke brisket. Oh, man. I love it. I absolutely love it. Anyways, James Tallarico, I don't think that he's going to win. Yeah. The people of Texas are not going to respond. I think that James Tallarico's vote tally is going to look very similar to John Cornyn's from last night. All right. Now, also, another rhino that is going to be leaving office is Congressman Chip Roy. Now, Congressman Chip Roy has done some things that make him look like he's good for America, but he's done plenty of other things which show you that he absolutely is not. He was so certain that he was going to become the GOP candidate for Attorney General in Texas, succeeding Ken Paxton, that he did not even file to run for re-election for his own seat. Last night, he was defeated by Texas State Senator Mays Middleton. And it also means now that Chip Roy is not going to be in Congress anymore. Middleton is a self-made oil and gas executive who branded himself MAGA Mays. He poured more than $16 to $17 million of his own money into this race. He overcame Chip Roy's name ID advantage and, of course, the support of the actual national GOP, and he has now won the nomination. Middleton is going to be facing Democrat Nathan Johnson in November as Republicans look to keep the Attorney General's office firmly in conservative hands. Roy conceded the race shortly after the results came in, saying he had already called Middleton to congratulate him. Just a little while ago, I called and congratulated Mays Middleton for his victory in our race for Republican nominee for Attorney General. I'll have a full statement tomorrow. Onward. The ballot box battle between Roy and Middleton, the president of an independent oil and gas company, turned bitter and expensive and partially became a test of which candidate was more of a fighter for Trump and his America First and MAGA movements. We've gotten the financial support necessary to compete with my self-funder opponent who's got the inheritance money that he can just spend, Chip Roy highlighted in an interview with Fox News on the eve of the runoff. Roy argued that Middleton's lack of courtroom experience would make him a poor attorney general. Having been the first assistant attorney general makes me ready on day one. But it's also that I've been a prosecutor. I've been in court. I've sat in front of a judge, stood in front of a judge, argued cases, and he's never done any of those things. And we think those things should matter. Now, the race turned into a referendum on loyalty to one thing and one thing only, and that was President Trump and the MAGA agenda. Middleton hammered Roy for his past criticisms of President Trump, including Roy's statement on the House floor that Trump had engaged in impeachable conduct related to January 6th. That right there is an immediate disqualifier. Middleton ran hard on the fact that Roy had spent years fighting President Trump instead of fighting the radical left and the deep state. Ads blasted Roy as backstabbing D.C. congressman who betrayed MAGA. Chip Roy is someone that has spent a decade fighting the president. He actually said President Trump committed impeachable conduct on the House floor. Instead of spending 10 years fighting President Trump, what have I done? I've spent 10 years fighting to defeat the left, which is what matters the most in this race. Let me see if they have an example of one of these ads. Nope, they don't have an example of one of these ads. But this is going to be good because we do have a interview that Mays Middleton did this morning with Benny Johnson, where he says the very first thing he's going to do when he becomes the Attorney General of the state of Texas is he is going to open an investigation, a criminal investigation into George Soros and the funding of riots and open borders crime that have disproportionately affected the state of Texas. He said, we already know who is driving this at the end of the day. George Soros is driving this. Foreign billionaires, NGOs like the SPLC. I will investigate these NGOs and hold them accountable. I will also investigate George Soros on day one in office for the crimes I believe he has committed against our great state. He's funding riots. He's funding DAs who are not prosecuting criminals. It's why I support Governor Abbott's statewide prosecutor plan, and it's why I also support adding prosecutorial powers to the Attorney General's office. Let's take a listen.
And I will investigate those NGOs and hold them accountable. I will also investigate George Soros on day one in office for the crimes that I believe he has committed against our great state.
Wow. Okay. Off the top of the head, that would be an open border, facilitating an open border into Texas, which has the longest contiguous border in America. Are those the kind of crimes you're talking about? Are you talking about Marxist street revolutionaries storming the Capitol? Can you unpack that?
Well, look, he's funding riots. We know this. He's funding these George Soros elected DAs. Their election where they're literally running on the promise of not following the law, their own sense of social justice, right? There was a DA in Dallas County that said he was not going to prosecute petty crime. There was a DA in Travis County, and he's still there in office, that said he's not going to prosecute criminal trespass. Right? We've had other DAs around the state that said they're not going to prosecute our pro-life laws to protect innocent babies, right? Those are on the books, but it's another reason why I support Governor Abbott's statewide prosecutor plan. I also support adding prosecutorial powers to the Attorney General's office as a backup, because we can't rely on these George Soros DAs. But I do want to take a step further than that. Y'all remember Marion Barry in Baltimore?
Of course. In
he
DC?
was the mayor. Yeah, he got arrested, I think, for crack cocaine and prostitution. He got out of jail, and then he got reelected. So I want a no Marion Barry's law where if you were removed from office, one of these woke George Soros DAs is removed from office, they need to be disbarred so they are never in the courthouse ever again.
Wow. What's your message?
That, I think, tells you the type of Attorney General that Mays Middleton is going to be. So I am also looking forward to that. So at the end of the night, once again, President Trump has shown that the power of his endorsements is enduring. And whatever the mainstream media or some crackhead influencer out there is telling you about President Trump abandoning the country or President Trump losing popularity because of, the way that he's running the country, at the end of the day, President Trump is doing things, he is reforming this nation in ways that no one else who has ever come before him ever has. He is putting the power back into the hands of the American people, and the American people are choosing to elect those who support President Trump and making America great again. So now we are talking about 118 out of 118. I'm sorry, now it's 119. 119. Man, go back just a little ways. Every single person that President Trump endorses is winning their election at the ballot box. Here, President Trump opened his opened the cabinet meeting today, taking a victory lap for those endorsements and wins.
Tonight was incredible. Not only Texas, but so many other places. And the numbers were fantastic, and they've really been that way for a year. If you look, it's hundreds of people won. and almost nobody didn't win. So, but last night was very, very powerful. So I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to the 12th cabinet meeting.
So President Trump also was asked in this cabinet meeting if he was worried about the midterms because of the decisions he was making. And he said, I don't care about the midterms. Now, you can take that a couple of different ways. Of course, some people are going to interpret that. Oh, my God, President Trump says he doesn't care about the midterms. He's going to make everybody lose. I think that is Anakin talk. I think that that is total bullshit. Why doesn't President Trump care about the midterms? Because he's not running in the midterms. President Trump is already the president of the United States of America. And the decisions that he's making now to fix this country are the only things that he cares about. He cares about the long-term survival of the United States and the health and well-being of the people of the United States of America. And in order to get there, in order to reach the finish line, in order to make the golden age possible, President Trump has to make tough decisions on a daily basis. And some of those decisions are going to lead us into a much better world. In fact, I think all of those decisions will. It's not always immediately something that you're going to feel results from. But I think everybody in their own lives has had points in those lives where they've had to make a decision. Do I take the easy way out and get instant gratification, or do I make a decision that's going to put me in a much better place where the rest of my life is going to be something that really, truly I can look back on and say, you know what, I did the right thing back then. This is what President Trump does every single day. And it's no small feat. It's not something that many people would be able to do. But President Trump is balancing it. And he's not a politician. He's not out there trying to make friends. He already won the election. He doesn't need to worry about another election. Now, let's take a look at how other people are doing. Ilhan Omar has a candidate that she's backed. Turns out this New Jersey Democrat at one point had volunteered for an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. He's not just a suspected terrorist, he's an actual terrorist. This is New Jersey Democrat House candidate Adam Hawami. He worked for an Al-Qaeda-linked nonprofit. This is back in the 1990s, before international investigations led to its closing. Now, Hawami said back in 1996 in an interview that he had passed out humanitarian supplies around Bosnia 2 years earlier for the Benevolence International Foundation, and citing the archive story from the Newark Star-Ledger. The U.S. government and the United Nations later identified the Illinois-based foundation as an actual clandestine funding source for Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Now, he said, I worked in Sarajevo for 10 days and then the rest in Zenica, a large regional center in central Bosnia. He was born in Egypt, so he shouldn't even be holding elected office in the United States. He said, we went out to hospitals around the area and in the mountains to check what supplies they needed, and we tried to deliver them. Beautiful. Love it. Humanitarian is awesome. Okay, but you were doing it for an Al-Qaeda terrorist affiliate. Now, he was asked, his campaign was asked about it. He said, no, I'm not going to comment on the fact that I worked for a terrorist affiliate. We'll just go ahead and let that one sit. He has received endorsements from all of the top leftists that you might expect. Representative Ilhan Omar, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He is a Muslim candidate. He's previously come under fire for his association with another convicted terrorist mastermind, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman. He worked for him as a translator, and he testified in his defense in his 1996 federal trial in New York. Abdel Rahman, who is nicknamed the Blind Sheikh, also was a co-defendant for his role in the deadly 1993 World Trade Center bombing and a host of other terrorist attacks. So definitely not someone to cast your ballot for. Now, we have another candidate I'd like to check on. This one I'm actually just a little bit sad for. Do you remember the Democrat candidate that I told you about last week? She was running for office in Texas, for Congress in Texas. She's a licensed sex therapist. That's spicy right there. But she is a radical leftist. She's the one who called for turning ICE facilities, ICE detention centers, into prison camps for American Zionists. Now, theoretically, I think that what she's talking about is hilarious. Certainly, I would have loved to have seen her make the argument for this on the campaign trail, because it would have just been a PR nightmare. She also called for the castration processing centers for pedophiles. I can totally get behind that. But unfortunately, she lost her Democrat primary runoff for Texas's 35th congressional district on Tuesday. Her name is Maureen Galindo, and she was running as a self-described participatory Democrat, and she lost to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office public information officer, a man by the name of Johnny Garcia, by a margin of about 20%. 40.5% to 59.5%. And this was just a couple of weeks after she was condemned widely by both Democrats and Republicans for saying that she wanted to put American Zionists in concentration camps. Anyways, I was looking forward to her being on the campaign trail and continuing to make these arguments. I certainly thought it would have made for a spicy campaign, but unfortunately, she's not going to continue forward. Also, definitely happy about this one. Representative Al Green, who was recently redistricted and was forced to run against a Democrat, despite living in an area that he had previously been able to handily win every single time, whether it was legitimate or not. He has just lost his primary challenge, and President Trump took to Truth Social to ring him to wring his ass, essentially. Anyways, President Trump got the last laugh on Al Green, the dim-witted congressman who has repeatedly been kicked out of Congress because of his bad behavior. He lost his Texas House District 18 primary runoff to a 37-year-old by the name of Christian Menefee. Al Green is 78 years old. It's time to retire. He was booted from his seat after more than 2 decades in Congress, and the final result showed him getting blown out by nearly 40 points. Green is best known for waving his pimp cane around like a crazy man, for authorizing numerous articles of impeachment against President Trump. Of course, none of them have gone anywhere because he is just a moron. Earlier this year, he got kicked out of President Trump's State of the Union. He held up that banner that said, "Black people aren't apes." Oh, man, this is the second year in a row that he got kicked out of the State of the Union. Let me read President Trump's statement from Truth Social. All right, so President Trump said, "Congratulations to the Democrat Party. Al Green, one of the most mentally deficient congressmen in the history of our Congress, has lost in a landslide his seat in Congress. But I will miss that lunatic not screaming and violently waving his cane at me during my next State of the Union speech. Make America great again. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump." X-users were in stitches. The visual of Al Green watching this tweet from his couch while clutching his cane is sending me. Trump never misses a chance to drop a flawless nickname. All right. Now, we also... Oh, you know what? Before we get into the next segment, I just saw this pop up on my newsfeed, and I love pointing out cases of blatant corruption. A former CIA officer has just been arrested in a massive fraud scheme, stealing 300 gold bars and secretly stashing them. This is roughly $40 million, and he used his position as a CIA official to do this. Of course, he had top secret security clearance. He was given this clearance, and he used his position to abuse that clearance and to steal $40 million in gold. Take a listen.
$40 million worth of gold bars in his home. If you're wondering how many gold bars that is, the court document says it's about 308. What my team here at...
God, I would love to get my hands on 308 kilos of gold. My Lord.
ABC News, Dan DeLuce and Gary Grumbach and I found is that man was not just an employee of any agency. He was a high-level official with top secret clearance in the CIA, and that he not only lied about what he was doing with this money, but that allegedly he also lied about his background, said that he graduated from a college he did not attend, that he went to a graduate school he did not attend, and that he had a pilot's license that the FAA said he did not have. So he was arrested last week, and he is now in detention facing these charges of lying about his background and perhaps knowingly embezzling American taxpayers' money. I want to read you a statement we just got in from the CIA saying that after a CIA internal investigation identified potential violations of the law, CIA Director John Ratcliffe referred the information to the FBI for a law enforcement investigation. The FBI is working closely with our partners at the CIA and the Department of Justice as we continue to investigate this matter fully. So, Hallie, we will be staying on this, but what this looks like is that this was someone who was given currency. He was even paid in cash and watches that he said needed to be used in order to pay for operations that he was in charge of. But rather than keeping it in his office, they found $40 million worth of this gold, as well as $2 million in cash and 35 luxury watches in his home. So we'll bring you more as we learn it.
Please do. Can you imagine how many people in black ops like this guy running off the books operations or taking money from petty cash at the CIA, ostensibly to pay off sources or gain information, just taking it and stashing it for their own personal use? I would imagine this is not the first time this has happened. I hope it's not the last time that we hear of someone being busted doing this. But this is what happens in compartmentalized operations where people are not looking particularly hard. Thank God they caught him, and thank God he got busted. And hopefully it leads to more. All right, I want to give you an update on that story from yesterday from California, where we learned that the state of California was pumping money into NGOs and contractors and solar install companies to give free solar panels to illegal aliens. They've collected nearly $1 billion in taxes to do this, to give solar panels to low-income housing projects. But it turns out that state officials have actually raided this fund, as California state officials have done on numerous occasions with other rainy day funds, and they've been sending millions of dollars to radical left-wing nonprofits to pay for things like defunding the police and paying off the professional paid protest operatives. This is Gavin Newsom's solar scam. The failures do not mean, however, that no one is profiting, Christopher Rufo says. The managers of the SOMA program have spent about $60 million on overhead, including salaries, conferences, website development, and more. And as part of the budget, they've devoted at least $5.5 million to community-based organizations, CBOs, which of course is a euphemism for left-wing nonprofits that, at least in one case, labeled giving solar panels to low-income housing residents as a way to fight racial injustice. So under the guise of marketing and research, SOMA paid more than $163,000 to the Asian Pacific Environmental Network. Vivian Yi Huang, the group's co-director, hold on, you guys, Cisco's got to go to the bathroom. Give me just a second and I'll be right back. And we are back. All right, so Vivian Yi Wong. She is the co-director of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and she said that the need to fight against systems of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism of the extractive economy is why they need this money from the state of California. The organization called for Richmond, California to defund the police and invest in Black lives, and they're a member of the Defund Police Coalition in Oakland, California. The California Environmental Justice Alliance told their supporters that it led to the creation of this SOMA program. Officials awarded them $230,000. Now, that nonprofit wants the, quote, democratization of land, labor, and resources, which is a commie buzzword, to reverse the long course of environmental racism, climate crisis, and colonialism. Now, the CEJA uses aggressive language to support their apparent goal of banning oil. What's at stake is our very survival, its then executive director said in 2021. We must make the transition to 100% clean energy and bring all communities along to avoid a devastating climate apartheid. You have got to be kidding me. These people are absolutely insane, but they're also very savvy because they continue to steal money from as many people as possible. Now, speaking of fraud, President Trump, during his cabinet meeting earlier today, also took the opportunity to blast the Somali fraudsters and several of the politicians who are with them. Let's take a listen.
These are crooked people. These are thieves. This isn't like a mistake. We're just talking about one person. He got hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for securing one man, for taking care of one elderly man. He was a service. He got paid millions of dollars for taking care of one man. Total crook. They're all crooks. The Somalians, what they've done to Minnesota, the Somalians, they're crooked as hell. Ilhan Omar, crooked as hell. They're all crooks. And we got them. We got them. Now we're putting the clamps on, but boy, I tell you, that's an impressive group of guys that you have behind you. I was watching that, and a couple of very strong women, too. But I was watching that last night. I said, I'm proud of you guys. These are...
Okay, so name drops Ilhan Omar and the Somali scammers and says that we're putting the clamps on. And President Trump also made mention at another point during this cabinet meeting that there is a lot of information, a lot coming down in terms of prosecutions. ZBM says, my favorites are the national polls of this administration's approval rating. Have no clue why Americans believe we would care what they think about the leader we picked. Cheers, RP and fans. Yes, sir, that is absolutely it. Yeah, I could give two shits what these pollsters have to say about President Trump. I see the job that's being done. I support it, and I am with him 100%. Sean Joe says, I think Gil might be running for Ted Cruz's seat. Cruz better get in line to fight for MAGA policies. I don't think he's going to. I think that Ted Cruz is who Ted Cruz is, and Ted Cruz is not going to change anytime soon. Ted Cruz is a bit of an opportunist. He came in as a Tea Party Republican, and he got compromised very, very fast. Ted Cruz may be brilliant when he's asking questions of people who come before the committees, but that's about where it stops for me. It's really unfortunate, but it's unfortunate for him. It's going to be fortunate for the American people when we can get them removed and have real fighters for the United States come in. All of these senators think that they're so powerful that because they've had these seats, because they have access to money, because they have access to the halls of power in the ivory towers of Washington, D.C., that they're unstoppable. But we are showing them that they, each and every one, are vulnerable. Now, Senator Josh Hawley, you know what? Any senator who has gone along with John Thune's tactic of engaging in the pro forma sessions to stop President Trump from being able to do recess appointments, in my opinion, is a traitor. And I want every single one of them to be replaced. That includes Bernie Moreno, because he did it the last time. That includes Josh Hawley, because he's doing it this time. All it would require for Josh Hawley to do the right thing and show that he actually supports the Make America Great Again agenda would be to refuse to open the pro forma sessions. All you got to do is do it once. And then President Trump has the power to immediately appoint all of those recess appointments, all of the U.S. attorneys, all of the positions that are currently open, every single aspect of this government that isn't functioning in the way that we want it to, I believe, is because the Senate has refused to do their job. The Senate is an enemy of the people. The Senate has continually shown that they are willing to stand in President Trump's way, if he doesn't do what they want. But the thing that they are continually refusing to acknowledge is that what President Trump wants is what the American people want. They think they know better than us. They think that they are smarter than us, but they're not. They are not smarter than us. They are not better than us. They don't know better than us. And they are all traitors. Every single one of them needs to be primaried. Let's see. Filter Dog says, James Tallarico, our trans community needs abortion care too. Yeah, it's one of the most retarded things I've ever heard. Yeah, totally stupid. All right. Kelly Loeffler spoke in her cabinet portion, saying that she and the SBA have found $200 billion in fraudulent PPP loans. Now, they have withdrawn and sent to collection the first $22 billion, which includes referrals for prosecution for the DOJ. But she wants everybody to know that the SBA is continuing to work. They continue to find more money that was fraudulently handed out by the Biden administration. And as President Trump said earlier, they knew exactly what they were doing. They did this on purpose. They tried to push as much money out the door as possible before the new administration came in, and they thought that they would not be prosecuted.
Particularly hurt by the fraud because they're some of our biggest taxpayers in the country, and they show up every day. They work hard to provide for their employees, to build their businesses. They're doing it the honest way, and they see fraudsters taking from the American people. It's taxpayer money. And so you think about, at the SBA, we found $200 billion in fraudulent PPP loans that the Biden administration tried to hide and forgive and sweep under the rug. We've turned the first $22 billion of that over to Treasury for collections and to DOJ for prosecution. Our Inspector General is already announcing that people are going to jail. There are jail sentences now being served. We've announced that 140,000 people have been barred from ever getting SBA loans again, defrauding the government for about $9 billion. So we are going to continue our work under the great leadership of Vice President Vance and appreciate the partnership because it's really accelerated our ability to get the job done. But then just back to small businesses. We have record business.
And that is on top of the fact that the SBA, once they came in and realized that the SBA was just handing out money without bothering to verify people's identity or whether or not they were citizens of the United States, that has been put to rest as well. The same thing with SNAP benefits. There was no verification that these people were Americans or that they were entitled to the money that they were asking for. DebWeath17 says, Rick Scott is up tomorrow for the pro forma gavel. He's been warned multiple times on X not to do it. We'll see. Rick Scott, I am the same for you. If you choose to open the pro forma session to keep President Trump from being able to do recess appointments, then you are a traitor and you need to be primaried. I think he's going to do it, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that all of these bitches in the Senate, these rhino bitches in the Senate, are doing it because they're sucking up to John Thune, because they want to keep their committee appointments. They want to keep access to information. They want to keep access to power. You know, if you want to keep access to your job, then you will do what the American people request of you, and that is to allow President Trump to do these recess appointments. The whole reason recess appointments are a thing is so that when the Senate refuses to do their job and push through the nominations of the president, that the president can get in there and get the job done, because otherwise the government doesn't work. And when the government doesn't work, those people who are holdouts from the last administration, the deep state acolytes of the former people who were in power, it stops the president from being able to successfully implement his agenda. Now, Lee Zeldin also spoke, again, talking about the money that was just rushed out to people like Stacey Abrams, who, again, is under investigation.
Stacey Abrams was given $2 billion for an account that had $103 in it, an environmental fraud, I guess. And she had $103 in this newly opened account. And before leaving business. They put $2 billion into the account, and they had no reason for existence. They were unable to say what they did with it. $2 billion. Lee, do you want to just mention something about that?
Well, thanks to your leadership, Mr. President, that was canceled. And they no longer have access to that $2 billion.
They fought like hell. They wanted that money. Go ahead.
In fact, it was over $29 billion that it's now been canceled at EPA. You told us to make it a priority. This happened as soon as you came in. After the election, before your inauguration, they were caught on video saying that they were rushing to get billions of dollars out the door before you're swearing in because they were afraid that once you were sworn in, you were going to stop it. Well, that part, they were right.
We did. Yeah, we did. Great job.
And we're happy to do it, Mr. President. And the Department of Justice under Todd Blanche's leadership, they just secured another big win in an appeals court on some recently canceled grants for different agencies. So great attorneys making sure that this.
And we learned about that this week. Major win for Lee Zeldin to be able to just cancel grants whenever he wants. That's exactly what we need. Also, a new report from Muckraker has exposed a massive EBT and charity fraud. It looks like immigrants in Lawrence, Massachusetts are openly buying food with food stamps. So they're getting free money from the state of Massachusetts. They're buying food. And then they're also going to food banks. They're collecting free food from charitable organizations, and then they ship it overseas, and then they sell it for a profit. Specifically in this instance, we're talking about a welfare scam within the Dominican community, and it's been happening for over a decade, they found. So Dominican immigrants buy food using their EBT cards. They also get it for free from food banks, and then they load it into shipping barrels. They then send it to the Dominican Republic, and then it gets sold in local bodegas in the Dominican Republic. They actually tracked the pipeline of these foods from the corner stores in Massachusetts to the shipping hubs in New York to the bodegas in Santo Domingo, and they're stocked with food that are paid for by the American taxpayer. Now, they also say we are prepared to share our findings with any legitimate investigative body. That is more than likely going to be the Department of Justice. This obviously needs to happen ASAP. Now, also, we should talk about this because I saw this going around on Twitter yesterday. So there were two notable cases that happened in close succession last year in Las Vegas. There was one, an Israeli diplomat who was caught in a child prostitution sting, a child abuse sting. That man was arrested. His name was Tom Alexandrovich or something like that. He was arrested, and then the judge allowed him out on bond and didn't take his passport. Well, the first thing he did was get on a plane and head right back to Israel. There is no extradition between Israel and the United States. Tom Alexandrovich has appeared virtually for, I believe, 2 different court hearings. But that case, I have not found anything additional about it since October of last year. As far as I can tell, the case is still ongoing, but people were saying that that case was dropped. That is a local Clark County case. It is not a federal case, and I have found nothing to show that it's been dropped. There was also this case with a man named Ori Solomon, who was an Airbnb property manager for a property that was connected to a Chinese illegal biolab. I'm sure you'll remember there was the illegal Chinese biolab in California, and then there was this other illegal Chinese biolab that was owned by the same guy that was found in Las Vegas. Now, Ori Solomon is not an American citizen. He is also an Israeli citizen. He is in the United States of America on a travel visa. He's not even eligible to work, from what I understand. But he's also he's not allowed to own guns as a condition of his visa. Now, when they raided the home, which was an Airbnb property that was not owned by him, it was just managed by him, there were guns that were on the property. Now, he was initially charged federally for those guns. Those charges have been dropped, and I don't know why they've been dropped. Maybe they found that the guns were not actually owned by him, but those federal charges were dismissed without prejudice, which means that they can be brought again in the future. but Ori Solomon is still facing criminal charges in Clark County for the improper disposal of waste. Now, the U.S. attorney for this district in Nevada is a woman who is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. And so every person that I saw talking about this on Twitter yesterday said, oh, look at that. The Israeli U.S. attorney has dropped charges against, this Jewish citizen, then also against this Jewish citizen. I think that people were getting these two cases mixed up in their justifiable rage when they were posting about it on Twitter. And then a lot of people were just amplifying it without looking into it. Well, you know me, I'm going to look into it to find out if I can see what's really going on, because, of course, it pissed me off if either of these things were true. Now, because Ori Solomon's weapons charges have been dropped without prejudice, again, they can be brought at any time in the future. We don't know the exact circumstances of why that is. But Ori Solomon still faces the original charges, the much more serious charges, under Clark County. And as far as I can tell, Tom Alexandrovich, the Israeli diplomat, he still faces charges for the child sexting that he was caught up in. So I wanted to make sure that I told you guys that, because I'm certain that probably some of you here in the audience had heard either one or both of these stories yesterday. Deb says, what do you think about next year after DeSantis is out? He primaries Rick Scott for 2028. I think that is something that could likely happen. And I would totally vote for DeSantis to be senator over Rick Scott. But there is also a lot of talk of DeSantis maybe being put into a position in the Trump administration by President Trump. That wouldn't happen until, obviously, after his term is over. So, it would be for next year. I think that anything President Trump would choose him for, that would likely be, something that he would do well at as well. There was some discussion of perhaps, him becoming a Supreme Court justice. I don't know, but, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would definitely support him primarying Rick Scott. Okay, now also, I wanted to play this clip from John Solomon for you because he is reporting that Joe DeGenova, who is leading the grand conspiracy investigation out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Fort Pierce, was in D.C. today to meet with Attorney General Todd Blanche. So this is, in my opinion, something that says that the investigation continues to move forward. If anybody is going to move this investigation forward and ensure that the grand conspiracy RICO investigation brings about the types of indictments that we need to see, it's going to be Joe DeGenova. Let's listen.
Meanwhile, a lot of reaction to the story that we broke in the last 24 hours. President Trump himself reacted to it, socialized the story. But we now have a second piece of evidence that the Justice Department under Joe Biden knew that its raid on Mar-a-Lago was bad. A couple months ago, we told you that the FBI had memos saying that they did not believe they had probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago, but they did it anyways. They went into the president's home looking for allegedly classified documents. Well, a couple days after that raid, one of Merrick Garland's top advisors, someone he personally brought in to make sure that they stayed ethical in their investigations of President Trump, wrote an email saying, I don't believe we had the right to go raid Mar-a-Lago. In fact, I've been worrying about it ever since I found out about it. Why? As she noted, and as we reported at the time back in 2022, she believed President Trump may have declassified the documents before he left office and therefore had every right to possess those documents at Mar-a-Lago. That is a smoking gun. Those two documents together could potentially create an overt act in a conspiracy case alleging that President Trump's civil liberties were violated. That is exactly what Joe DeGenova and the team in Miami and Fort Pierce are looking at. Today, that team was in Washington meeting briefly with the Attorney General, Todd Blanche. We'll have a lot more on that as the next few days unfold.
Oh, Deb is Space Coast Patriot on Pilled. Okay, awesome. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Now, obviously, just continuing to watch to see what's happening with that. Also wanted to make you aware of another child sexual abuse bust that was down here in southern Florida. A Florida Atlantic University student government leader who also just so happens to be an outspoken LGBTQ plus activist and journalist was just arrested on Tuesday after he drove to meet whom he believed was a 13-year-old boy for sex. according to police and a citizen predator watch group that caught him on video. His name is Christian Joseph or CJ Walden. He's 21 years old of Boynton Beach, Florida, and he's now facing felony charges of traveling to meet a minor for an unlawful sexual act and using a two-way communication device to facilitate the felony. Walden, who serves as the Ways and Means Chair for Florida Atlantic University's Boca Raton House of Representatives, allegedly exchanged explicit messages with a decoy who told him he was 13 years old. The amateur 561 Predator Catchers group confronted Walden after he arrived at a Home Depot. In a video posted to social media, Walden appears to admit the person he was trying to meet was 13 or 14 years old. Walden's online activity shows him to be an outspoken queer activist who lists his pronouns in his bio. He is also the editor-in-chief at Out FAU, a queer student news publication. I'm an undergraduate at Florida Atlantic University majoring in public management with minors in communication studies and women, gender, and sexuality studies, he wrote on his LinkedIn. He also co-founded Prism Florida Incorporated, a 501c3 sex-positive education nonprofit. In February of 2026, he was featured as a most eligible bachelor in Out South Florida, a South Florida queer newspaper. Asked what his turnoffs were and his potential partner, he replied, racism, homophobia, sexism, or other abuse behavior. And these are pictures apparently from his social media. At his court appearance on Wednesday morning in West Palm Beach, a judge set bond at only $5,000. Walden's mother stood in tears and told the judge her child was a good boy. He's a good kid, she said. Outside the courtroom, both his parents defended him to local media. He's absolutely innocent, his father said. Well, maybe they should watch the video where he admits to driving to meet a 13 or a 14-year-old boy. Let's take a look at the court proceedings.
After Walden's initial court appearance, we caught up with his parents outside the courtroom. Do you have any comment on your son's arrest here?
No comment.
You said he's innocent. Can you tell me what you mean?
Absolutely
I think he's
innocent.
Just stop. He's absolutely innocent.
He's a sweet kid. He's just
And
vulnerable.
put your phone down before I take it from you.
At FAU in Boca Raton, summer classes are now in session.
Ma'am, is your son going to get Trump this time? Here he is. This is in 2025 in March. Walden testified at the Florida State Capitol to urge lawmakers to reject SB 1710, which is a bill to remove DEI from state agencies.
We are facing a severe healthcare crisis. This bill creates more barriers than
My God, my impression was pretty spot on. I never heard the guy talk.
Solutions. Making admissions and grading even tougher doesn't make better doctors, it makes fewer of them. We need more doctors, nurses, and skilled professionals, not fewer. I urge you to reject SB 1710. Support policies that expand opportunity, not limit it.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for keeping the 30 seconds, sir.
All right. Well, student government at FAU have announced an emergency meeting for Friday to consider two bills aimed at removing Walden from government. Walden has yet to set a plea, but his bail is at $5,000. All right. In a stunning reversal from the New York Times, they have just published a story admitting that climate doomsday predictions might have been overblown. The New York Times has just acknowledged the rollback of an extreme global warming scenario they had previously used as headline fodder on Tuesday. So they addressed this doomsday model that representative concentration pathways 8.5 precision in why scientists retired the dire climate scenario used for over a decade. The New York Times has obviously published numerous alarmist headlines based on the RCP 8.5 since it debuted first in August of 2011. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change found in April that this pathway, this model, and other comparable climate models have become implausible. Some critics argue the model depended on unrealistic coal consumption numbers and was implausible when it was first released. They ran a story with an article like "The Great Climate Migration Has Begun," and how climate migration will reshape America. This is back in 2020, seemingly justifying mass migration on the basis of global warming. The stark policy choices are already becoming apparent as refugees stream out of the Middle East and North Africa into Europe and from Central America into the United States. An anti-immigrant backlash has propelled nationalist governments into power around the world. The alternative, driven by a better understanding of how and when people will move, is governments that are actively preparing both materially and politically for greater changes to come. The model shows that the political responses to both climate change and migration can lead to drastically different futures. Back in 2017, they published another article, As Climate Changes, Southern States Will Suffer More Economic Damage, predicting mass die-offs across the southern United States from increased global temperatures. The projected increase in heat-related deaths by the end of this century would be roughly equivalent to the number of Americans killed annually by auto accidents. That's hilarious. Teach about climate change with these 24 New York Times graphs. They had previously said, back in 2018, they wrote another article, A Rise in Murder? Let's talk about the weather. They presented links between hot temperatures and homicide, noting that ignoring the connection seems unwise given another trend, climate change. Their editorial board published another article in 2022, Climate Change is Not Negotiable, arguing that radical revisions to the U.S. economy and government to forestall global warming's allegedly devastating consequences must take place. Some of us have been talking about this for almost a decade. The fact that it took so long is a big problem. There will be significant consequences as the world unwinds from the extreme scenarios, they said. But of course, none of it happened. It was all fake, all fake, all fake. All right, let me say thank you to number one Indiana Dad, who says an unnamed federal district judge in the 11th Circuit was privately reprimanded for an extramarital affair with a high-ranking police and law enforcement officer, including having sex in their chambers. You know what? I actually was waiting on Marco Polo to identify who that judge was. That's why I haven't talked about that. But let's go to Marco Polo's timeline and see if they have identified that judge. They said that they were very close to identify. They actually have identified her. Federal district judge fornicated with Atlanta police deputy. It appears that she, another black judge, Eleanor L. Ross, and the police officer is Deputy Chief Kelly Collier. This is identified by Marco Polo. Federal district judge fornicated with Atlanta PD deputy in her chambers. In 2023, we revealed to you the current sheriff of Fulton County had previously moonlighted as a gay softcore porn star. We have more distressing and pathetic information out of Atlanta. As Law 360, Reuters, and Bloomberg have all reported, the Judicial Council of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals issued a ruling on May 22nd, which affirmed a limp-wristed reprimand released in February that lets a sitting federal district court judge off the hook. The federal judge had sex multiple times during the workday in her chambers with a current deputy chief of the Atlanta PD. The judge even gets to remain anonymous, at least by the 11th Circuit, that is. But Marco Polo is not the self-protecting Judicial Council of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And there we go. All right, I'll find some more information about that, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But thank you, number one Indiana Dad. Thank you to G. Fontez also, who says, I suppose another claim can be made by another state, plaintiff, or format pertaining to unfit driver operators of freight trucks or any motor vehicle, and pray there's many brilliant lawyers on it. We'll see what happens for sure. Let's see. Thank you to Filter Dog, James Tallarico. The trans community needs abortion care. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Sulfanol says the young elites are getting their wings clipped. Stupid fuckers. Filter Dog says Rick Scott, and maybe this is in relation to his decision to... hey, Rick Scott, tomorrow will be your most difficult decision. If you gavel in a pro forma session, you will be primaried. MAGA is watching, and very closely. Gavel in, and you are resigning your Senate seat and will be cornered, just like you saw in Texas. Judy the Lady Pug, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog says Governor Gavin Newsom just announced an unconstitutional plan to tax 100% of any anti-weaponization funds Californians receive from the Trump DOJ. All the more reason to move the hell out of California if you are a person who is going to receive some of those funds. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Darla, who says, I'm so sick of the alphabet soups. They're just pedos hiding behind that plus sign. Soon the P will be added. We have got to put the brakes on this insanity. I believe we are. Identifying them, catching them, and arresting them is the first action we've got to take. And then finally, Sean Joe, thank you very much for the cookie. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. That will conclude today's episode of Red Pill News Live. I hope that you can join me tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode. Until that time, good luck and God bless. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.